Hey guys, what's happening? So we're jumping back into our Venom coverage for Venom issue 39. It's here where we see what exactly future Dylan needed from Loki, as well as a much closer look at Meridius 2.0, who has seen a lot over the years, to say the least. So with that said, if you're enjoying these videos, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications. Alright, so this one picks up after Carnage destroyed the Garden of Meridius, which sent Meridius, Eddie, and the other versions of Eddie back into the time stream as a result of the garden being destroyed. And in Venom issue 35, we saw that this led to Meridius blaming Eddie, human symbiote Eddie. But at this point, the others who were following Meridius, they all turned on him, joined Eddie, and pushed Meridius out of the time stream, sending him back to the beginning of time as they traveled to the present day to start Venom War. So this time around we follow Meridius, as we're told the world was beautiful in the beginning, but this is not his time, not yet. Besides, he thinks he can do better, so Meridius waits and sleeps. In his waking moments, he relives the history of men without interfering. He feels little as they build, burn, and kill each other over their imaginary differences, repeating the same mistakes generation after generation. They excuse it all with their ignorance. And there's a moment here where Meridius is passing by a guy who's saying, "Then Jesus said, 'Forgive them, for they know not what they do.'" As it goes on to say, but Meridius knows, they might not know what they do now, but they, referring to the humans, they will learn, and it will not stop them. And following this, we move further into the future, where at this point, Meridius has moved in next door to his parents. And there's even a moment here where we see Carl and Jamie Brock stopping by to welcome their new neighbor with a fresh apple pie. And it's funny because when he introduces himself, he tells them his real name. He's like, Edward. And his mom's like, "Edward, that's a nice name." So there you have it. Eddie Brock was named after himself. And so following this, we head over to Jotunheim with Old Man Venom and Loki, where at this point, Old Man Venom, who's also future Dylan Brock, he's given up his name after making a deal with Knull. So just keep that in mind as we move forward. But at this point, with him coming to Loki this far back in time, Loki doesn't even know what a symbiote is. So he asks, "What are you?" And they respond saying, "We are Venom." So Loki's like, "Sure thing, buddy." But what Loki notices is that there is a mortal man on the inside. So he asks, "What is the other thing?" So Venom tells him, "A symbiote." And Loki's just like, "Symbiote? That sounds like a parasite trying to remarket itself." So he sends Venom flying out of this little shack that they found him in. And so the old man, formerly known as Dylan, he tries to tell Venom that they need Loki, so take it easy here. But with Loki calling Venom the P word, he's not gonna let that fly. So it quickly turns into an instance where old man Dylan's try to mediate between Loki and Venom. Because when Venom tells Loki, "I am not a parasite," Loki's just like, "That's exactly what a parasite would say," as he turns into a snowman and just appears behind them. But next, Loki asks, "What is that thing you are carrying? There is something else in you. Beyond the mortal, of course," referring to the metal alloy imbued with chaos magic. So again, with future Dylan, or Old Man Venom, and I say that because he's still referred to as both to kind of avoid confusion or anything like that, he lets Loki know that he'll tell him everything, but he needs Loki to stop attacking the symbiote because he needs the symbiote to stay alive. But if Loki keeps attacking it, they're gonna keep going back and forth, and nothing's gonna get done. So with hearing this, Loki's like, "That's what a parasite would make its host say." So Venom tells Dylan, he's not going to listen. Let us show him the alloy, show him the power we carry. So as the real Loki tries to catch them slipping from behind, Venom brings out the Molten Man alloy that's been imbued with chaos magic, and it just shatters Loki's dagger. As we're told here, uncontrollable, it thunders around them. In the reflection of the metal alloy, they see universes long since dead. They see worlds through the eyes of Knull, boundless powers and unending destruction. And as this is happening, he tells Loki, "Dr. Stephen Strange said that it could not be forged in the light, and that you could help me, and that you would, for a piece of it." So from here, the God of Mischief wonders if the old man knows what he's carrying, if he truly understands the power he's giving away. So Loki tells him, "You have a deal, old man," but he doesn't plan on letting him know what this alloy is truly capable of. And following this, when we go back to Meridius, at this point we see what is eventually him observing the life of young Eddie Brock after he lost his mother. And we're shown an example with another family in the park of how having a mother around could have possibly given Eddie a different childhood, because after Eddie lost his mother, his father Knull became very cold and unable to show love to his son. And with how this is set up, now Meridius was there to watch what is essentially his childhood, like when Eddie turned 9 and he found out that his mother died during childbirth, and how when Eddie was 11, he spent every afternoon studying in a futile attempt to impress his father. And at 13, when he stopped looking for his father to show up at his games, Meridius was there. And I'll admit, as this continued to go through the younger years of Eddie Brock, when I first read this I was thinking to myself, this has gotta be leading up to that accident. Because when Eddie was a teenager, he stole his dad's car to sneak out and get drunk with some friends, and when he tried to sneak back home, he ended up hitting one of the neighbor's kids who ran into the street and killing him. And there was this whole thing in Venom Volume 4 where Eddie's dad, Knull, wanted him to plead innocent, and Eddie didn't want to, and Knull later on went bankrupt trying to cover the whole thing up. But now with Meridius watching this happen, and keep in mind when this version of Eddie turned into Meridius, after going through the multiple stages, he no longer considered himself to be Eddie Brock, which is why throughout Venom War, when we see Carnage calling Meridius Eddie, Meridius hates it. So now with Meridius reliving some of these moments, it briefly causes him to ask himself if there's any part of Eddie Brock that remains in him now. And I'm not gonna front, this kinda has me wanting to see some sort of redemption for Meridius down the line. Like, I don't know, maybe he can become an old biker and protect Dylan at some point. Who knows? But following this, we jump back to Old Man Dylan and Loki, who've made their way to the forge at Nidavellir Lair, where he gives Loki the material to be forged with the shadows. And there's a moment here where Loki asks, how many does he need? So the old man tells him, as many as you can make. So from there, Loki's just like, you should rest, old man. This will take a while. So he lays down for some hours, figuring that these will be the last hours of his life, because when this is done, he'll be approaching the final stages of what him and Venom came back to do. And I gotta admit, as he's laying here, there's a moment where we see what looks to be butterflies, and it just reminds me about what Doom said about going back in time and changing things, and how some moments are dead butterflies, which won't change the future, but the live ones will. Because after these hours pass and Loki tells him that he's done, it kinda has me thinking like, did Old Man Dylan just give Loki something that's going to alter the future? But either way, when Loki's done, he tells him, 2 for you and 1 for me. Because Loki got himself made a big nice shiny knife, while on the other hand the old man just gets 2 little bullets. And it catches him off guard because he thought he would get more than 2. So the old man takes him, saying that he'll make do. And now that their deal is done, Loki does future Dylan the favor of sending him back to Earth, which now brings us back to a moment not too long after what we saw in Venom issues 36 and 37, where future Dylan extracted the metal from Molten Man, where now Meridius, who's continuing to watch Eddie, he now sees Eddie with Anne Wang, much like we saw in issue 36, and he already knows this is the happiest that Eddie will ever be. He knows where this is going in the next couple years, with Anne becoming She-Venom, getting pregnant with Dylan, not telling Eddie, as well as her eventually taking Dylan to Knull, which for Dylan is the start of history just repeating itself, where much like his father, Dylan has a hard life ahead of him. But these are only brief thoughts before Meridius sets his focus on Old Man Dylan, because much like in issue 37 where we saw Meridius follow Old Man Dylan to the Sanctum Sanctorum, that plays out the same way here, except when Meridius makes his way to the Sanctum Sanctorum, this time he ends up running into the future Dylan who's just returned. So when Meridius confronts him, he tells future Dylan that he's not supposed to be here. But of course, the old man, he doesn't even know who Dylan is, but he remembers Meridius from the battle. But with saying this, it has Meridius thinking that future Dylan's playing games, because he doesn't know why future Dylan doesn't remember who he is, but it immediately has Meridius thinking 2 things, where 1, this Dylan definitely is from the future, and 2, he's coming from a future where Meridius is not. So that in itself has Meridius curious to know what future Dylan knows about the future. And so of course, the old man, he's just trying to fight off Meridius so he can time jump again. But Meridius, he only sees this as a child being disrespectful to his father, which on one hand is a funny thing, but at the same time it goes to show how this Meridius, who was sent back to the beginning of time, who's observed things after all that's happened, he's starting to show more of the Eddie-like qualities, even though he's claimed in the past to have put it all behind him. But after catching up to future Dylan, or Old Man Venom, Meridius takes a look into his mind so he can see what this future holds. And when he does this, this takes us into what Meridius explained to Carnage, like we talked about when we covered Venom War Carnage issue 3, because it's here we're told, in the mind of the old man, Meridius sees the future. He sees the coming war, and the decades of horror that follow. But then the pain comes, which is also when Meridius realizes that Dylan's dying. And it goes on to say he knows, radiation from a time yet to come flows from Venom to Meridius. It moves around his being like poison and blood, unfamiliar and all-consuming. The agony lingers as the old man escapes. And so because Meridius is in so much pain, old man Venom ends up getting away and jumping forward into the future. But what has happened here with Meridius experiencing this pain and this poison, this was Meridius' first encounter with what would become the K chemical. So for Meridius going forward in the linear timeline from this moment in the past, this is why he went on to start the K program. And as far as future Dylan, once he leaves here, he then arrives at the end of Venom War issue 4 in Grand Garden Arena in the present, where both Eddie and present day Dylan are bonded to the Venom symbiote, just as Dylan, aka Codex, stabs Eddie in the back. And at the time when we saw this, we knew the old man was going to show up, but now much like with Meridius, and even Carnage from the Venom War Carnage tie-ins, we now know so much more about the events that led up to this point. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.